Make sure you like our award-winning Kutztown University Radio Facebook page or at Twitter at @KU Radio. From KUR News, I'm Mike Regensberger.
Any views or opinions expressed on KUR are not necessarily those of Kutztown University, Kutztown University Student Government, Kutztown University Student Services Incorporated, KUR staff and management, or other affiliated organizations.
Time's yours.
He fires, and it is caught for a touchdown. It's gone! And Giroux's got it! And the Sixers have scored 9 in a row. Are you kidding me?
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another edition of the Tyler Werner Show right here on Kutztown Radio. And, I look back at the past week of Philadelphia sports. Obviously, Eagles' huge blowout loss to the Green Bay Packers. Check. The 76ers still winless. Check. The Philadelphia Flyers. And they only had 2 games since the last time I did the Tyler Werner Show, and one of them, of course, being against the Columbus Blue Jackets with former Flyer Scott Hartnell. And they lost to them, and the next night they lost to the very good Montreal Canadiens team. Check. And not only that, it was, what was the high today? 28, and it was windy. Check. So, it's just one of those, I guess it's one of those weeks, really, where it's one of those rough weeks in Philadelphia sports talk.
Oh God, ease our suffering, and this is our moment of great despair.
It's it's going to be I guess quite an edition of the Tyler Werner Show today. Obviously, starting off with the Philadelphia Eagles. Huge loss to Green Bay. I mean, obviously, my prediction last week was that of course the Eagles were going to lose to the Green Bay Packers. But, obviously not 53 to 21. Now, again, I mean, it's what we'll talk about on this show today. Obviously the areas of this Eagles team that obviously needs improvement. Not just maybe not just right now, but just going forward through the future as we head into. I guess year 3 and 4 down the road of the Chip Kelly era, because I think as far as that, what was I guess being called like a measuring stick game against the Green Bay Packers at Lambeau Field this past week. I guess if you want to use it as a measuring stick game, clearly I guess it kind of showed that some people maybe were a little too overhyped about this Philadelphia Eagles team. Now I don't think I was. I said last week, I don't expect Mark Sanchez to lead this team to the Super Bowl, and of course when they obviously I still think they'll make the playoffs, and we'll talk about the playoff scenarios down the road, and I guess particularly how I think it's going to play out, because I don't really want to waste my time going through all these possible scenarios of if this could happen, and there's a bunch of things that could still happen, obviously, but I would I'll focus on what'll be most likely to happen, I think, at least from my mind, and where things stand with the Philadelphia Eagles. But again, I mean, last week the I guess if you want to talk about the landscape of the NFC, I mean, last week, you looked around and it seemed like it was pretty wide open. I mean, you had Arizona, who was, they were 8-1. They were the only 8-1 team, and suddenly they lose Carson Palmer, and people think, that now they'll probably lose to the Lions, and they're not. Maybe they won't get home field advantage anymore. And well, I mean, they had Drew Stanton out there, and with Arizona's defense, they played pretty well, and now they sit at 9-1, 2 games better than anybody else in the NFC. So I mean, it's going to be pretty hard for them not to be one of the teams that are get a first round bye. And as far as NFC teams goes, they're an elite team, and obviously you got the Green Bay Packers, who obviously Aaron Rodgers playing lights out. And not, of course, not just against the Philadelphia Eagles this past week. There's been Obviously, he played lights out the week before against Chicago, and ever since he said relax to his fans back in September, he's been having one of the best seasons of all time, really, for anybody in the NFL as far as quarterbacks are concerned. So you take out their 1-2 start, and you look at more recently, and obviously the talent. And Green Bay, they're an elite team, and who knows? If I had to make a prediction today, I would think that it's going to be them against Arizona in the playing for the NFC Championship game right now. And I look around the rest of the NFC, and I don't see anybody that is elite. Now even if the Eagles would have lost against the Green Bay Packers this past weekend in like a closer fashion, and not by 32 points, then maybe you could have made a case that maybe they could still be elite in a sense that they went to Green Bay where it was I guess it looked like it was snowing to some extent. So, between light snow, flurries, I don't know, but with wind chill, it was like 15 degrees I was hearing, and I give credit when I hear a guy like ESPN Sal Palantonio talk last week how he had to go up to Green Bay for that game in the cold, snowy, and frigid weather up there. Hello. Obviously, I give credit to him, but certainly, maybe the Packers are used to these conditions, and that'll work to their advantage, I'm sure, in the playoffs if they can get a second seed. Who knows, maybe more if Arizona comes down to some extent down the stretch. But the Eagles had a chance, in that cold weather, and just on the road in general to, maybe prove that they could at least be in the same class as Green Bay. And, this past week, obviously on Sunday night, Sunday evening, however you want to put it, that wasn't quite the case. And obviously, we'll talk about that. But I'm not going to sit here today and say the Eagles are in big trouble. I've been here in the studio actually pretty early today for actually the past few hours because I'm working on this video project for one of my classes, and I'm doing something, kind of doing something about KUR. It's like it's called a sound piece. It's like a mini documentary, and I was talking to station, the manager of the station, Mike Regensberger, and one of the first things he says to me is, so do you think the Eagles are in trouble? And when he asks that, my first instinct is actually, a kind of like an Aaron Rodgers reaction.
5 letters here.
Like no, they're not in big trouble.
X. Relax.
Yeah, relax.
We'll be okay.
We'll be okay. It's not going to be, I wouldn't say we're in trouble if when you're maybe talking about whether or not this team can make it to the playoffs still, and win this NFC East division, like they were expected to this season. But as far as being an elite team, as far as expecting them to go to the Super Bowl, some people out there are saying, "Oh, they just had a bad game," and I don't know if a great team doesn't have a horrible game like that. Let's just put it that way, and it doesn't give up 53 points, regardless of who's playing quarterback and etc. And not only that, the Eagles, they couldn't even they couldn't even score themselves really, for the most part, which is a bit of a disappointment because Green Bay's defense hasn't been lights out. They have some playmakers obviously, but you still would have expected the Eagles to score, and they had some red zone issues in this game. They had to resort to field goals. And against an elite team like this Green Bay Packers team, and especially against a quarterback like Aaron Rodgers, you can't afford to be kicking field goals. So, I mean, a game that the Eagles were never even in, really. I mean, that's the bottom line, and it's it's a shame. It's a disappointment, and certainly, we'll talk about that, and maybe how this Eagles team can become an elite team, because I'm sorry, but Mark Sanchez looked good against the Carolina Panthers, who have just been awful since starting pretty decent in the beginning of the season. But they go to Green Bay, and you got the Aaron Rodgers standard there, and Mark Sanchez kind of goes back to I guess looking a little more like the Mark Sanchez that that I kind of said how from the New York Jets, from his day, his era in there, Sanchez kind of became like the I guess the reference I made a couple weeks ago, the puppy that lost his way, and
Oh my God,
I'm sure Adam Sandler would appreciate that kind of reference there, but no, in all seriousness, I mean, I think he kind of saw Sanchez, kind of getting a bad situation here in this game, and just from the get-go, I mean, he just didn't, he didn't look like last week. Obviously, he didn't look confident, and he looked pretty lost, and like he didn't know what to do when Clay Matthews was coming straight at him unblocked, right off to his right side. So the way you get in the show today is 610-683-4859 on the phone lines as usual, or you can go on Facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show and post something there. Now I'll bring to everybody's attention today that we actually have a KUR trainee shadowing us today, and before we hit the first break, I'll turn your mic on and allow you to introduce yourself. I saw your name up there on the sheet. What's your? But I forget what it is. What?
It's George Fladeland.
All right, George Fladeland, and I think right off the bat, before I even go any further, I should mention that he told me he was he's listened to the show a few times actually, so that's good to hear. Yeah, deserve a round of applause for that, for listening in, and certainly. I mean, you're entitled to share some thoughts today on this show, and now you said you're an electronic media major as well, right? You said
I just switched into the dark side, the bottom part of Rickenbach,
which that's right. And I'm and communications major, shares the building. So I guess the dark side. Yeah, if you want to, you can call it that, I guess, if you want, but yeah. So we got a shadower today, and before we hit the first break, I'll read a little message here from the KUR notebook. Attention KU community, Dr. Patricia Herberer Rice, a historian at the Holocaust Museum Center for Advanced Holocaust Studies, will give a presentation entitled Giving a Face to Faceless Victims, Profiles of Disabled Victims of the Nazi Euthanasia Program, at 6 p.m. on Wednesday, November 19th, in Academic Forum Room 102. This special event is open to the university community and the public. This message of community interest brought to you by the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR. I apologize if I mispronounced the Dr. Patricia's middle name there, I guess. But anyhow, we'll discuss more on the other side with the Philadelphia Eagles and, other Philadelphia sports talk, as always, right here on the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio.
The following is KUR's mission. The purpose of KUR is to provide a means of student training and experience in radio broadcasting, to provide a means of entertainment and information for the student body and community, to serve the public interest, and to be an instrument of expression for student, faculty, and community opinion in accordance with the rules of the Federal Communications Commission and KU policy. If ever you, as the public, should have any questions or comments about our mission, feel free to contact us through our website, kur.kutztown.edu. There you'll find a whole host of ways to contact us via our Facebook, Twitter, email, or phone numbers. Thanks for listening to the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR.
As a young teenage boy, I didn't even know what autism was. How do you even spell that? A few years later, I heard that a friend's cousin's son had been diagnosed with autism.
I still wasn't sure what that really meant.
When I went to college, my roommate's brother had autism. When I moved to the city for work, my best friend called me and told me his son had been diagnosed with autism. We were both in shock. I still remember the day I walked into the house and saw that look on my wife's face. I knew something was wrong. I'll never forget how I felt when she said, "Our son has autism."
Autism is getting closer to home. Today, 1 in 68 children is diagnosed with autism. That's about a 30% increase in 2 years. Learn more at autismspeaks.org/signs. Early diagnosis can make a lifetime of difference. Brought to you by Autism Speaks and the Ad Council.
It's 6:22 right here on the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio today on this cold, windy November 18th evening here. Yeah, I mean, talk about a cold day. I mean, the Eagles up there at Lambeau Field this past weekend, playing in rather, cold temperatures. I mean, they look. I mean, obviously Green Bay. I mean, home field advantage to some. Obviously at least to some extent. I mean, you had. Green Bay. I mean, it's known for getting very cold up there, especially during the wintertime. And the Eagles go up there. I mean, the week before, obviously on Monday Night Football, they hosted the Carolina Panthers, and I think it was like maybe 50 degrees. And the week before that, they traveled to Houston, down south in Texas, where it was obviously pretty warm for that game. And so, I mean, bottom line here is that at least in the sake of the Eagles here, I mean, they go up to Lambeau Field, and it's not only that. I mean, it was kind of snowing up there during the game. I mean, I'm watching like Aaron Rodgers. Obviously they get a kind of like a close up view of him as he's like calling signals on the field, and seeing the landscape of the Eagles defense, and I'm watching some snowflakes. Getting his eye. Him blinking his eyes because snow's getting in his eyes, but I'm sure Aaron Rodgers at that point is thinking in his head
five letters R-E-L-A-X.
So I mean, the guy's used to that, I guess. But and it again, I mean, he's playing at a completely lights out level right now, and for this Eagles secondary in this game, I mean, it was the way I see it, I mean, it was a match made in hell as far as I'm concerned. I mean, and it's one of the main criticisms, you can have, and obviously one of the main improvements that, Chip Kelly and Billy Davis and Howie Roseman, they're going to be responsible for making in the offseason. Because, I don't know what would make them think that, Kerry Williams and Bradley Fletcher out there are going to get the job done against Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb, amongst other Eddie Lacy out of the backfield. That's not as much on the secondary as the receivers, and obviously Aaron Rodgers throwing to him. One of the main criticisms that a lot of people have with the Philadelphia Eagles so far in the Chip Kelly era is that, they haven't beaten they haven't really beaten winning teams, and they haven't beaten great quarterbacks. And my theory is they probably won't be at that elite level to beat those teams, and especially in the playoffs, until maybe they find an elite quarterback of their own, or somebody that is borderline elite, or maybe a top 10 quarterback, certainly. And obviously, they got to make some much needed improvements on the Seagulls defense. I'm watching this. I'm watching the secondary in this game, obviously. Who, again, we knew coming into this game. I mean, they were doomed from the get go, and again, Aaron Rodgers, he hasn't thrown an interception at Lambeau Field in, I guess it's over 300 pass attempts now. Dating back to December of 2012, he hasn't thrown an interception at Lambeau Field. And the 3 interceptions that he's thrown this season have all been off the receiver's hands, I would go on to hear from other radio shows. And so, there you have it right there. They weren't going to pick him off. And against the blitz, Aaron Rodgers' QB rating is like 130, however that mathematical equation works out. But obviously that's very good. So you got to, obviously, I guess they had to get natural pressure on Aaron Rodgers, and they didn't, they pretty much failed to do that all game. And that, it's quite a shame. Again, you blitz them, and it's like, Rodgers is going to tear you apart anyways. His QB rating's 130, and you can't trust the secondary really against these receivers, and against Aaron Rodgers, who's going to put the ball right where he needs to put it. And then again, they couldn't get natural pressure on him. I thought they were doing a decent job of shutting down the run game early on against Eddie Lacy, but then later in the game, he had some bigger runs. I think at that point, when the Eagles kind of started to know that, we're not going to win this game, and I think that was evident in the first quarter once. Once the Packers got up 10-0, they were never going to get any kind of. They weren't going to stop Aaron Rodgers really, and they weren't going to start scoring more points than the Packers were going to score, especially when you're turning the ball over and you're moving the football and not getting it into the end zone when you're in the red zone, and you're having to kick field goals. So pretty disappointing offensive performance. Some of which I'll talk about later, of course. And just the defense, just kind of everybody overall, including the coaching staff. I heard from Billy, I don't know, it was either Billy Davis or Chip Kelly, that thought that the Green Bay Packers were going to run the ball more than they did, and what would make you think that when when you got Jordy Nelson and Randall Cobb, Aaron Rodgers throwing to them, Quarles, whoever else they got, and Eddie Lacy out of the backfield, and against this Eagles secondary, and just the fact that, again, Aaron Rodgers at home is pretty much, unbeatable and unstoppable in recent memory. What would possess them to think that the Packers were really going to run the ball here? I don't know. Obviously, maybe it makes sense for them to run the ball if they go up, 30-6 or however far up they were, in this game. But as far as, I guess, overall and early on in the game, what made them think that, the Packers were going to cling to the running game here? When you got this Eagles secondary who Aaron Rodgers can just slice apart, which of course he would go on to do. I don't know. That was, again, that's just one of those things.
Somebody owes us an explanation.
What are they thinking? So right from the get, they were outcoached, they were outplayed, kind of every sense of the word, and it didn't look like the Eagles wanted to be out there. It's one thing they were, they were slipping all over the place as if they didn't have the right cleats on, or so, I don't know, maybe the commentators were saying, or some people would say. So obviously that's one, I guess, disadvantage for the Philadelphia Eagles there. But certainly it's not an excuse that they lost by the huge margin that they did. And I mean, it just goes to show you that this Eagles team, they're not elite. That's the bottom line. I mean, sure, I mean they should still be a playoff team, but right the way it's looking right now, I mean, the NFC is going to go through either the Packers or the Arizona Cardinals. It's going to go through those teams, and then there's kind of just everybody else who's in the playoff mix who's good, and and then you got everybody else below that, whoever you want to insert there. But I mean that's the bottom line right now. I mean, it's the Packers and the Cardinals to me, and the Eagles. Not quite. I know some people made predictions, earlier in the season that, I don't know, like Mike Greenberg even last week, from Mike and Mike in the Morning, of course a Jets fan, and I mean he said, he was getting behind Mark Sanchez because as being the former Jet, and maybe this Eagles team can get this to the Super Bowl, and I don't know. Maybe Mike Greenberg placed a bit of a jinx on him there. I don't know, but certainly they didn't look like a team that was going to make a serious run for the Super Bowl this season. And it's something that everybody has to come to grips with. But again, at the other end of the spectrum, I still expect the team to bounce back. Well, obviously, they better bounce back and beat the Tennessee Titans this week by a wide margin themselves, as bad as the Titans are. And at home, you got to expect them to bounce back at home. Where at home they've been solid this season, and and even last season, if with the exception of that playoff game against the Saints, who obviously a pretty maybe not this year, but at the time, veteran coach and veteran quarterback, amongst the best in the league. Obviously, before the questionable year they're having this year. So, other than that, though, Eagles have been pretty good at home, and I would expect. Obviously, they should bounce back against Tennessee, and so after that, we're kind of just looking to the forward to the 4 days after that Tennessee Titans game to the Dallas Cowboys game on Thanksgiving evening at 4 o'clock or whenever the time frame is for that. So I apologize ahead of time if we're not going to have too much analysis for the Philadelphia Eagles against the Tennessee Titans. But again, the bottom line is they should bounce back at home. They should be angry, and they should just steamroll the Tennessee Titans, and maybe hopefully they'll be able to actually run the ball here because, again, LaShawn McCoy, it was another one of these games where you thought, maybe they were going to get it going, and the Green Bay Packers run defense has not been the best in the world, and they failed. Once again, LaShawn McCoy just couldn't really get it going, and I'm sure the people that have him out there on their fantasy teams, I'm sure just continuing to be outraged at the lack of production out of LaShawn McCoy. But certainly, as far as this Eagles team goes, certainly it's hurting them because that was one of the keys of last season for the Eagles' success. That and not turning the ball over. Now, as we move through a little bit more in the show, we'll get to a segment. Obviously, one of the highlight segments of the Tyler Werner show, as we always do, called the Call Out of the Week.
It's time for Tyler Werner's Call Out of the Week.
I just think somebody owes us an explanation, that's all. What's the matter with you? Loser! You're a loser! Are you kidding me?
Well, I have a microphone, and you don't.
So you will listen to every word I have to say!
Yeah, obviously, I guess if I wanted to, I could call out the entire Eagles team this past week. But I mean, that's a little too general, and I guess the rest of the show. I mean, the exception of this segment, I guess pretty much most of the rest of the show, I kind of do that anyways. So, but as far as a specific call out of the week, as we always do on this show, this is a little bit out of the box again, outside the box again, but I call out somebody who actually one of my favorite sports radio listens, over the past few years. Ironically enough, but I think kind of for good reason. And that particular sports radio personality being Tony Bruno.
Go ahead, hater.
Who, I guess I'll give a bit of a background so I can, of why I'm calling him out this week. He was part of 97.5 The Fanatic for the past few years. With other guys on that station like Mike Missinelli.
Brindy, how you doing, man?
Of course, Harry Mays used to. I thought Tony Bruno and Harry Mays used to do a pretty good show. I thought on
what is going on back
on
there?
97.5 The Fanatic, and back in June that came to an end. I guess between contract negotiation issues or whatever, this and that, taking a pay cut. I don't know all the details, but that's the general gist of what happened. And Tony Bruno was since June no longer was a part of 97.5 The Fanatic. So, essentially what he did was last month he kind of, I guess on his website and everything, he kind of rebooted what he calls the Tony Bruno Show, and but now it's like the podcast edition because he's not on a radio station, and I guess they stream live on the website or something, and I've listened to the podcasts that he's done, and they're talking about on the show how the quality on the live stream that they have is not quite as good. So, I guess that's a bit unfortunate for them, but they're doing, they're podcasting the shows and they're putting it up on the website. And now last week I hear, ironically enough, on the Mike Missinelli show, this one guy calls in fairly frequently on the Mike Missinelli show on 97.5 and is known for doing Tony Bruno impersonations. I mean,
let's go to the phone.
Yeah, stuff like, he'll throw lines like that out and, impersonate Tony Bruno pretty well. A lot of his catchphrases, the dozens of catchphrases he might have on his radio shows. And so, he's been doing that for a couple of years. Every now and then he'll call in and they'll give him, like a minute or two to, just do a Tony Bruno impersonation as if it was, live on, Tony Bruno doing a show. And so suddenly last week, and, he even, this guy who does these impersonations, he even called in one time when Tony Bruno and Harry Mays were together in 97.5 The Fanatic. So it was like Tony Bruno talking to another Tony Bruno, ironically enough. And the impersonator talking to Tony Bruno, and he had no problem with it. He thought it was funny, and throughout his time hearing about these impersonations, he never had a problem with it. But now all of a sudden, last week, he comes out. Last week I hear on the Mike Missinelli show this impersonator call in, and Mike Missinelli brings up, and I guess they both kind of brought up how the Tony Bruno camp is not happy about this impersonator calling up now on 97.5 The Fanatic, and suddenly the Tony Bruno camp points this out as making fun of Tony Bruno. But I mean, Tony Bruno himself, when he was on 97.5 The Fanatic, he never, again, he thought it was funny, and he didn't have a problem, and he didn't feel like he was getting made fun of. But now it's like now he's off doing these podcasts with, his camp or whatever, his interns and whoever else. And only now is it a problem that, this Tony Bruno guy impersonator guy calls in and does impressions. So, you have that. And, there's been a couple, in recent weeks, too, there's been tweets, somebody tweeted to Tony Bruno that, something about 97.5 The Fanatic, why he's not on anymore and stuff like that. And Tony Bruno said in a tweet or something, I think a couple weeks ago, that the station was dead meat or something. And, I don't know why, and the thing is too, by the same token, Tony Bruno will say how, he likes everybody he's ever worked with and everything like that, and then he says something like that, and it's suggests otherwise. Go ahead, hater. Sounds a little bit hypocritical, but then Mike Missinelli, kind of answers back to that and says well, actually, the ratings on the station since Tony Bruno's been gone are actually actually higher than they've ever been. So, I guess I don't know. I guess. Dead meat, I guess, doesn't apply there. And, again, I'm listening to the, one of Tony Bruno's podcasts last week, right after, this stuff is happening. And, I'm kind of, he's kind of, bashing the whole concept of radio in general. He's saying how, we don't have that rule here for call-ins when you have to be 18 or older, and we don't have commercials here because it's a podcast and it's live on the internet and stuff. And it's obviously, on the radio, obviously there's advertisements. That's how the stations and everybody, that's how they make their money. So, and again, the sports radio medium, that's what he's been working in for years. And only now does he kind of point that out, now that, he's doing a podcast and, that's commercial free, but then again, it's not, it's kind of his own little business, and I think that's great, but then it kind of bashed, the whole concept of radio that you've worked in for all these years. It's really? It's too much, sour grapes here, and, I don't know. It's just kind of a mess, and I think it's kind of just, taking some things a little too far and, calling your ex-employer, I guess, dead meat when, I guess ratings are higher during this football season right now than they've ever been. And so, kind of some silly stuff right there. And I think, again, right here, we're right here in Kutztown Radio. So, you kind of we're a radio station, you're essentially bashing every radio station in a sense, saying how, you have to be 18 or older to call in and on radio stations, and we don't have commercials like all those other radio stations out there. It's just kind of pointless to point that stuff out, I guess, in the first place. So anyhow, we'll move on with the show. We'll get on with back more to the business end on the other side. 610-683-4859 or at facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show. We'll be right back after this.
It's Telescopic Topics, a look into the world above us.
Have you ever wondered how we as a species were able to perform space travels? Hi, I'm Eric Eldred. All of the manned missions you've heard of would not be possible without the work of their predecessors, animals. Now, I am by no means a Trekkie, but to quote an ever-famous phrase from Star Trek, to boldly go where no man has gone before is something that could be used when space exploration began back in the mid-1900s. We became so fixated on knowing the unknown and to discover and explore that we ended up in an international race to space with Russia. Because no human had ever been in space before, it was hard to tell what effects weightlessness and being in space could have on the human body. So to find out what could happen, we used animals. Space is arbitrarily defined as the boundary between the atmosphere and space, approximately 68 miles from the surface, otherwise known as the Kármán line. If I were to ask someone what animals were the first to be in space, I think it'd be safe to assume they would guess a mouse, dog, monkey, or chimp. If you guessed any of those, you actually aren't far off. The first animals to reach space were fruit flies. On February 20th, 1947, the United States put fruit flies aboard captured German V-2 rockets to study radiation exposure at high altitudes. Much to the dismay of the United States, it was Russia that was able to have a living animal successfully orbit the Earth. Albert II, a rhesus monkey, flew 83 miles into the air on June 14, 1949, but he unfortunately died upon impact after re-entry. But it was in 1957 that Laika, a mostly Siberian husky from the streets of Russia, orbited the Earth. Although due to complications, she died a few days into her trip aboard Sputnik 2. Since then, multiple animals have been used to test the effects of space exploration on living creatures. Since 2011, NASA has put an end to manned missions. Because of their heroic efforts, unbeknownst to them, animals are the sole reason we've been able to come as far as we have.
Telescopic Topics, a look into the world above us. Stay tuned to KUR for more telescopic topics, and for more information or to hear the segment again, click on the Telescopic Topics icon on the KUR website at www.kutztown.edu/KUR. Telescopic Topics is a production of the KU Physical Sciences Department and is recorded by the KU astronomy students in the studios of KUR. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time.
It's 6:47. Welcome back to the Tyler Werner Show right here on Kutztown Radio, coming off of the Big Eagles loss to the Green Bay Packers this past week. Obviously big in the sense of the score differential, obviously. I mean, obviously the defense, having a horrible performance, maybe to some extent worse than we thought. I mean, they couldn't get pressure on Aaron Rodgers, and, for the most part, you have Bradley Fletcher, covering Jordy Nelson, and, just a disaster waiting to happen. Seriously, you have Bradley Fletcher, I'm watching the way he's covering Jordy Nelson, and he's it looked like he was just trying to stay with him, and I guess, he didn't even know, when the ball was coming to Jordy Nelson, and I just get the impression that Bradley Fletcher was just trying to, I guess stay close to him and just hope that Aaron Rodgers was going to put the ball, maybe off the back of himself, and not even, and not hit Jordy Nelson on fade routes, and where the ball needs to be placed, and because obviously Aaron Rodgers puts the ball pretty much where it needs to be put every time, for the most part. So again, I look at him, and it looks like he was just hoping to get lucky. And, for Aaron Rodgers to have bad throws. And then you go to the other side, you had Kerry Williams, who, it looks like he just, shies away from contact sometimes and making a tackle. It looked like he was giving so much space on the other side to Randall Cobb and, whoever he was covering. And kind of just waiting for him to catch the ball and, 5 yards away and then trying to make a play. And, he just... Again, two cornerbacks that, they can't afford to bring out there next year on the field. That's the bottom line. And I don't even know why they brought him out in the first place. And, it's a shame that, they had to place Earl Wolf on IR, but, still, depth-wise, they're pretty, you're missing that. You're missing him. Then you got Kerry Williams and Bradley Fletcher, and they really don't cut it. And Nate Allen is Nate Allen, obviously. I don't know why he's still on this Eagles secondary. And that's another position that they need to improve on. You got Malcolm Jenkins, who's been decent, been a decent strong safety this, throughout the season. But he didn't really have a big game. He didn't have a good game, and pretty much nobody on this Eagles team had a good game. So, that's the bottom line there, really. Again, they just, and the tackling was not up to par either. And, I mean, again, they just looked cold, and I don't know. It looked like most of the guys would have rather been on the sideline, maybe building a fire to stay warm or something. I don't know. Roasting marshmallows or I don't know. Have Nick Foles come up to the fire and,
how's everyone doing?
Maybe tell some,
Come on.
I don't know, maybe tell some ghost stories while he's while he's out with his hurt collarbone. I don't know. I couldn't imagine how hilarious something like that would be, but I don't know. They look like they didn't really want to be there after once the game was out of reach. I mean, I think everybody kind of knew, they weren't going to beat this team, but just to begin with, it was a disaster waiting to happen. And again, I mean, Mark Sanchez, he didn't quite look up to par and like he did in the Carolina game. And I mean, he took that one hit earlier in the game where, I guess some people, Eagles fans, complained that, there was a helmet-to-helmet hit and that there was another one later on that wasn't called. But I mean, even if it was called, in the grand scheme of things, it wouldn't have even mattered if they called any of those. So, but there was one play where it was a bit concerning earlier on in the game where, like his neck kind of snapped back, and I just wonder if anybody else out there was thinking what I was thinking. If they had flashes of Matt Barkley and
Oh God, these are suffering, and this our moment.
If he comes, I mean, if they have to bring out Matt Barkley, then it's really gonna be a rough season. I mean, then if they have to bring out Matt Barkley, then maybe they could possibly get swept by the Cowboys, and I think if they get swept by the Cowboys, I think it's pretty much the Cowboys' division then at that point. But at least with Sanchez, I think I think they should have split with the Cowboys, and more on that later. And again, I mean, some people, after seeing Sanchez's performance in this game with 2 interceptions, and there's some high snaps, I don't know, bad snaps, and LaShawn McCoy fumble, but as far as Sanchez goes here, I mean, again, he kind of looked a little more like the Sanchez that we're more familiar with. And some people were bringing up how, like, oh, if they had Nick Foles in there, this game would have been better. They would have been better, and
let's make some noise. Come on.
Yeah. Foles would have made some more noise, but I really don't think there was any chance of them winning this game, regardless of even which Nick Foles would even be in there. Even if it was the Nick Foles of last year, who was 27 touchdowns, 2 interceptions in the regular season. Even that Nick Foles, I mean, he's still the defense on the other side of the ball, playing obviously pretty much worse than the Packers defense. And you had the running game for the Eagles that could not really get off the ground. The ground game that couldn't get off the ground. No pun intended there. But obviously headed by LaShawn McCoy and Darren Sproles. Well, I mean, Darren Sproles only had 2 carries in this game because, he's not a guy that's going to get that many carries. But, even in the screen game, I mean, when Darren Sproles gets the ball or, he could make some big plays. And as many touches as LaShawn McCoy gets, obviously more so than Darren Sproles, it seems like even then, I mean, Darren Sproles makes the plays, and I'll have more to speak on that later. But since we're getting close to the midpoint in the Tyler Werner show, we're going to get into the on-air fantasy with Tyler Fleming and myself. But before I forget, I just caught myself in my tracks from the KUR notebook. Attention KU community, the regular monthly meeting of the Berks County Genealogical Society will be held on Thursday, November 20th at 6:30 p.m. in the Society Library, room 413, Goggle Works Center for the Arts, 201 Washington Street in Reading, PA. The program is History of the Patriotic Order Sons of America, Past, Present, and Future by Scott Schultz. Doors open at 6 p.m. Cost is free to members. Donation requested from non-members. Refreshments before the meeting. This message of community interest brought to you by the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR. And so, yeah, as I just mentioned, we're going to get into the on-air fantasy football game as usual for between Tyler Fleming and myself. Pick our teams as usual, and to the shadow we have here. That's when each week, like Fleming and I, we pick a quarterback and we alternate. We pick a running back, we pick a couple receivers, a tight end, defense, kicker, and we have our own scoring system. And each week, and then we see how things play out. Now, for example, this past week, Fleming had Aaron Rodgers as his quarterback, who obviously lit it up. He had Jordy Nelson on his team. He had Emmanuel Sanders, the Bills' defense, amongst other players. And I had some guys that kind of let me down. I mean, I had Phillip Rivers at quarterback, who only threw for one touchdown against the Oakland Raiders, and T.Y. Hilton, who it was normally a big receiving threat. He didn't do anything against the Patriots. And Demaryius Thomas, who he put up some yards, but he didn't get any touchdowns. So, I mean, that the gist of that is, pretty much the final score there is 53 points for Fleming and 19 points for myself. So, kind of a, I look at that score and I my first instinct that I think to myself is like, boy, that's almost like the Eagles game this past weekend. So, yeah, I mean, there you go. I mean, 53-19, ironically enough, almost the score of that Eagles game this past week. So, yeah, I guess I gotta, as Andy Reid would say, I gotta do a better job this week in picking my team, maybe. And yeah, we'll see how things play out. So, yeah, so let me get the obviously the games that are to come up next week in the world of the NFL. And I guess this week I get the first pick in the on-air fantasy competition. So yeah, let me get started here. And I'm going to start out picking quarterback to hopefully make up for last week not really having a very productive quarterback. And so let me look around here. I took Phillip Rivers last week, and that didn't pan out too well. But this week I'm gonna take Andrew Luck and the Colts, hosting the Jacksonville Jaguars. Should be obviously a bounce back game for the Colts, and I would think a big game for Andrew Luck.
Again, we're going with the pattern of stealing each other's picks or backups.
Yeah, we know what we're doing here. That's the bottom line.
So since you took Andrew Luck, I'm going to go with Peyton Manning against Miami.
All right. Yeah, probably another bounce back situation for him as well. And now your pick for the next position. You get first pick.
All right. I think I'm going to go with running back Jamal Charles.
All right. Jamal Charles from the Chiefs. That sounds like a good pick. I keep hitting the wrong keys here in the wrong order. There we go. All right, now for my running back. Again, each week I'm tempted to take LaShawn McCoy but I can't trust him even against the Tennessee Titans. You just every week that people calling him to have a big game and he just doesn't. So I'm gonna play it a little safe, I guess, and go with somebody who I think's a little more trustworthy this season to put up yards and points. So I'll look across the board a little bit here and think who I can select. Well, you know what? I mean, coming off the bye, against the Giants, who are kind of all but dead. I'm gonna have to go with DeMarco Murray against the Giants this coming week. I still wonder if he can hold up the rest of the season the way he has early in the season, but I mean, he's still a good pick. So, yeah, I'll take DeMarco Murray there, and then we'll pick one more player here before we hit the halftime break, and I'll go with wide receiver first, one of the wide receiver positions, and let me think. Last week I took T.Y. Hilton, I took Demaryius Thomas. Let's see here. I guess I'm gonna go with Brandon Marshall from the Chicago Bears. Actually, I think this week against the Buccaneers. I think the Bears looked a little more. I don't know. I guess maybe like they won't continue to stink it up at home like they have this season. So against this Tampa Bay Buccaneers team, I'll have to go with a Chicago Bear receiver here, and Brandon Marshall I think will be the guy for that this week.
All right, steal my number 3 prospect over there. I'm gonna steal one of your picks, if not both of your picks from last week. I'm gonna go with Demaryius Thomas for my first wide receiver.
All right. Yeah, they just had a rough game against the Rams. I mean, he put up yards, but...
Yeah, who saw that coming?
Yeah.
The Rams?
Yeah, nobody did, yeah. Then again, I mean, it's weird with the Rams, right? Like...
Yeah, it's like the Steelers.
They
play horrible one week, and they come back and get 6 touchdowns in 2 straight games.
Yeah, I don't... Yeah, I mean, again, it's one of those... I don't get it. I mean...
I just think somebody owes us an explanation.
I mean, the Rams, like they've upset. I mean, they upset the Seahawks a few weeks ago, and after the loss to the Cowboys, and everybody would have thought that, they'll bounce back and look more like themselves. And then the Rams beat them in the strange fashion they did, and so yeah, I mean the Rams aren't too bad when they play against division rivals, actually, but. Yeah, who saw that coming against the Denver Broncos? I don't know. Right now, as far as the AFC goes, advantage to the New England Patriots right now, and what they've been doing. And yeah, speaking of other NFL teams, we'll come back after the halftime break here in the Tyler Werner Show, and as usual, I'll give 5 impressions of other teams around the NFL outside the Philadelphia Eagles. So yeah, Look for that to hit on the other side of the break on the Tyler Werner Show. 610-683-4859 or at facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show. It's another one of those Time's Yours Tuesdays.
Time's yours.
Right here on the Tyler Werner Show. And we'll be right back after this.
Gold Microphone Award-winning college radio in northeastern Berks County is KUR Kutztown, 1670 AM, on your TV by tuning to Service Electric Berks Channel 24 or 99, Service Electric Lehigh Channel 266, or Berks Hometown Utilicom Channel 28. Online anywhere in the world at kur.kutztown.edu, on your smartphone by using an application like TuneIn, or on any phone, cell or landline simply by dialing 610-465-7860. Gold Microphone Award-winning college radio in northeastern Berks County is the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR Kutztown. KUR can also be heard in select campus buildings like the MSU, Rickenbach, Stratton, Rec Center, and Keystone at 88.3 FM.
Nominated for Best College Radio Station at an institution with under 10,000 enrollment and winner of Best Use of Social Media, your news leader in northeastern Berks County, KUR Kutztown.
News, time for news.
The KUR News Time is the top of the hour. I'm Mike Regensberger. A Dauphin County lawmaker is hoping that rumors of an early January legislative session to pass controversial bills so Governor Corbett can sign them into law before he leaves office are just that, rumors. Harold Ondig has a story for us coming to us from the state capitol.
Senator Rob Teplitz says state lawmakers should be respectful of the fact that Pennsylvania voters have selected a new governor and that there's a transition going on.
Nothing should be done under the current governor that would appear to be done simply for political reasons to get priorities that the current governor has that he couldn't get done in the last 4 years done before he leaves.
Senator Teplitz says the Republican majority in the Senate and House will have a full 2-year session to push their priorities through, and he finds it ironic that many so-called reformers in the legislature are considering this unprecedented move to get their way on issues such as pension reform and privatization of the state store system.
I find it really ironic that some of the same folks who claim to be the big reformers here in the Capitol are the ones that are pushing for a lame duck session, that are pushing for this transitional session, that pushed to violate the rules on late night voting back in October.
Howard Ondick, State Capitol.
It's Disney Live, Mickey's Music Festival, presented by Yo Kids Organic Yogurt. Mickey Mouse headlines a concert experience jam-packed with hit songs and fresh mixes of Disney classics. Join Buzz Lightyear, Woody, Aladdin, The Little Mermaid, and more than 25 of your favorite Disney friends as they rock the stage. Come join the party and let the music move you.
Stonyfield Yo Kids Yogurt is proud to sponsor Disney Live. Celebrate Disney magic of healthy living with Yo Kids. Moms love it because it's organic. Kids just love it. Playing this Friday at Santander Arena.
Checking KUR Sports for late-breaking sports scores and news from your KU Golden Bears as we get into the winter season. Make sure you follow KUBears.com. Monsoon Mike says this weather feels more like January, but finally some moderation coming later this week, into the weekend, and early next week. Until then, bundle up. For late-breaking news, weather, sports, and traffic, sometimes before we can even get live on the air, make sure you like our award-winning Kutztown University Radio Facebook page or at Twitter at KU Radio. From KUR News, I'm Mike Regensberger.
Any views or opinions expressed on KUR are not necessarily those of Kutztown University, Kutztown University Student Government, Kutztown University Student Services, Incorporated, KUR staff and management, or other affiliated organizations.
It is 7:08 on the Tyler Werner Show. Past halftime on the Tyler Werner Show, and the sound of that music, well, as we normally do around this time on the Tyler Werner Show, we'll go around the league this past week in the NFL and look at some of the other games that, upsets, I should say, that happened, because certainly there were a lot of upsets that happened this past week in the NFL, and, just, impressions to begin with. Obviously starting with the Atlanta Falcons, who, believe it or not, at 4-6 right now, or ironically enough, they're leading the NFC South division against the Carolina Panthers, who, after missing 2 field goals, I mean, they just need one of those field goals to convert, and obviously they missing one earlier. Now, at the end of the game, they have a chance to win the game, and they miss another field goal, and in effect they lose 19-17 to the visiting Atlanta Falcons team. And of course, now that lead, Carolina's pretty much out of it, barring a miracle. I mean, the way they've looked, and they're like riding the huge losing streak right now, and theoretically, I guess they're still in it somehow, but that's only because you got the Atlanta Falcons at 4-6. And next, because you have the New Orleans Saints, who are also 4-6 right now, but again, they don't have the edge of the Falcons, because the Falcons, ironically enough, have a 4-0 division record right now. Ironically, all of their wins for the Falcons, apparently, they can only win in their division so far, and that's it. They've yet to beat somebody outside of their division. But the Saints, again, last week it was ironic enough that the reeling San Francisco 49ers go over to New Orleans. And the way New Orleans had looked up to that, it looked like they were getting it back together. And, the 49ers go in there, cross the coast and, pretty much and upset the Saints. And now this week, the Cincinnati Bengals, from up north come down to New Orleans, to the Superdome in New Orleans and beat them 27-10, a complete outright beatdown of the New Orleans Saints. Is the Cincinnati Bengals going in there. I mean, so suddenly that home field advantage that was, once a reality is, as of late, it's just kind of gone in a sense. And I don't know, it just leaves me scratching my head right now how the Atlanta Falcons right now are technically the leader of that division. But I mean, hey, like some people are saying, you can't count out the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are 2-8 right now in that division. So believe it or not, they could somehow make the playoffs. But I don't know, it'd have to be miraculous if they did. But so that's all we have for the NFC South right now in this segment here for the day. Number 3, the Houston Texans go to Cleveland and beat the Cleveland Browns, who Cleveland was leading their division last week. And it seems like that AFC North division, it seems like every week somebody else leads it. I mean, a few weeks ago it was the Baltimore Ravens who were hot, and then the Steelers beat them, and then suddenly it looks like the Steelers are the team to beat in that division. And then suddenly they lose one to the Jets, and then you have the Browns, who beat the Bengals on Thursday Night Football outright in Cincinnati, and then suddenly it looks like the Browns are the kings of that division. And then they lose to the Texans this week, and the Bengals go to New Orleans and win. And right now maybe it looks like the Bengals are the favorite to win that division, but then again, who knows? I have no idea. But the Browns, Brian Hoyer having an awful game. He was like 20 for 50 and, pretty bad against J.J. Watt, who on this Houston Texans team, plays a down on, in the red zone on as the tight end, and gets a touchdown. The second time he's done that in the tight end position this year. Who of course is a defensive end, I believe, for the defensive tackle for the Texans. Just a beast on defense. Let's put it that way. And a former tight end, however, and they trot him out of tight end, they get him a touchdown pass. So, I mean, the guy's up there as far as MVP of the regular season talks goes. Up there with Aaron Rodgers, obviously, but again, J.J. Watt is just, what can't this guy do out there in the field? Now let's go over to let's go to number 2. I guess we could call it here. And you look at the Seattle Seahawks, who had they had a chance to maybe reassert themselves as obviously as a team that was going to make a run down the stretch here against the Kansas City Chiefs. Andy Reid's Kansas City Chiefs team, and the Chiefs beat them 24-20. The Seahawks, they have a brutal schedule down the stretch here. They have 2 games against the 49ers. They have 2 games against the Cardinals. They have a game against the Philadelphia Eagles at Philly in between the 2 San Francisco games. And they got to take on the St. Louis Rams, who already upset them once earlier this season, and just has, even though they're 4-6, they have a knack for beating teams that are just, you wouldn't expect them to beat. So that's that. And then obviously, for a second I thought my NFL music ran out here, but no, we still got it going. Leads me to number 1. And obviously, this is a disappointment, number 1 here. The Denver Broncos losing 22-7 to the St. Louis Rams, who I just talked about how they have a knack for upsetting teams. Broncos are 7-3 now. I mean, suddenly they're tied with the Kansas City Chiefs record-wise in their division, and they already lost to the New England Patriots. As far as maybe getting the home field advantage here. Maybe now it's New England's to lose as far as the AFC goes. As far as the getting the first seed in the playoffs, home field advantage, and maybe ultimately getting to the Super Bowl. So that's that. I mean, 22-7 upset of the Denver Broncos. This loaded Broncos offense, they had a bit of an injury bug this past week, I guess, to be fair, but still, I mean, Peyton Manning is Peyton Manning, and ironically enough, they lose a big one. Now, I guess I sent an honorable mention to the New England Patriots, winning 42-20 against the Colts, but then again, I figured the Patriots were going to beat the Colts anyways. And that this Colts defense was not going to stop the Patriots offense, and for those who watch the game on Sunday Night Football, they bring out this guy, this fullback or running back. I mean, I guess whatever you want to call him, technically speaking, from the practice squad. They bring out this guy, Jonas Gray.
Who is this?
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy from the practice squad. They bring out there and pretty much focus their offensive game on out of nowhere. I mean, he's a guy. I mean, he's he's built obviously rather big, and they handed it off to him 38 times, and he got like 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, they call Marshawn Lynch beast mode. I mean, this guy right off the practice squad. Beast mode. Beast mode. I mean, it's like they're a running back factory up there in New England, if you think about it. And coming up a little more in the show, speaking of running backs in factory, I talk about the Eagles running game, who, in recent weeks, people have been saying, it's the three, they've been dubbing it the three-headed monster and stuff. And, obviously led by LaShawn McCoy, and then, of course, Darren Sproles, and then Chris, the young Chris Polk, who's a bit more of a power back, unlike the other guys. And, so I definitely want to bring that up coming up in the next segment of the Tyler Werner Show today, amongst other things, as always. Now we have another message from the KUR notebook, and I want to ask the Shadower if he has any interest in reading one of these.
I'll do it.
Yeah. Because I remember when I was doing shadowing last fall, I remember that was like one of the things. Like, do you want to? They offered me to do one, so I'll offer you to do it since you're a shadower. So go ahead.
All right, attention KU community. The Kutztown University Department of Music will present O Magnum Mysterium on November 22nd at 7:30 p.m. in the Schaefer Auditorium. This is a free concert, and it will include the University Choir, chamber singers, after hours, and bare voices under the direction of Dr. Hank Alviani. This message of community interest is brought to you by the radio voice of Kutztown University, KUR.
All right.
Okay.
All right, so there we go. Good job.
I try.
Yeah, so it's there. So that's a little later on. That's only one less for me to do then, I guess. But yeah, so that's part of the duties here, I guess, on KUR. And once upon a time, actually, I was told we didn't have to do that. But then, like a month ago or something, Mike Regensberger said that somebody that listens said, we're supposed to do those again. So now obviously that's a bit of an adjustment to the priorities here on the show. So 610-683-4859 or Facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show if you want to share your thoughts on this big Eagles loss and other things with the Philadelphia sports teams, which we'll get into a little bit on the other side. So without further ado, it is the Tyler Werner Show, and it's right here on Kutztown Radio.
Hi, we are Pack 183, and we love listening to KUNR.
Driving has a rhythm all its own. Don't wreck it with a text. Before you get behind the wheel, silence your phone. Or better yet, designate a texter. For more text-free driving tips, visit stoptextstoprex.org. Brought to you by the Ad Council and the National Highway Traffic Safety Administration.
It's 7:21 right here in the Tyler Werner Show on Kutztown Radio. What was a cold and windy day here. I mean, 28, I think, was like the high all day, and with the wind chill, I mean, it was just colder than that. So, it felt colder than that, but, it's getting to that time of year again, I guess, whether people like it or not, I guess. And some might be calling it another brutal winter, perhaps. I don't know. I guess that remains to be seen. Then again, I mean, I think that's what the Farmer's Almanac says or whatever, that it's going to be another brutal winter. Oh, no! But, I guess we'll wait and see. It's already getting cold and windy, so who knows? Now, shifting gears a little bit, talk a little bit of 76. I mean, the Eagles, obviously, they're a huge loss to the Green Bay Packers. But the Sixers, who, again, I mean, we know how they've been tanking the season and everything, but I mean, they took tanking to a kind of to an all-time high last Thursday night against the Dallas Mavericks, losing 70 to 123 points. Just absolutely,
Oh God, ease our suffering, and this is our moment of great despair.
Yeah, I mean, as Clark Griswold would put it, suffering would be a way to explain that. But, and I mean, ironically enough, this, like, they scored, like, the Mavericks scored, like, 73 points. They were up, like, 73 to something at the end of the first half. And, ironically enough, like, to win that game at that point, I mean, they didn't even have to score at all in the entire second half to even win that game, as the Sixers would only score 70 points. So, I mean, you're up 73 to whatever in the first half, and ironically enough, that's all they needed to win the game in the long run. Now, it's bad, it was bad enough that, they had Michael Carter-Williams, who was, he was back ready to play, but, reportedly, like, Coach Brett Brown wanted to put him in the game on defense early on or whatever, and I mean, Carter Williams, just points up at the scoreboard as they're getting killed, kind of as a response to, like, obviously Rookie of the Year last year, for the Sixers, for the NBA, but. Basically pointing at the scoreboard and, like, you want me to get you want to put me in this game? Like, look at what the score is. Again, I mean, they tanking to an all-time low here is the 76ers team. I mean, they have a bunch of guys that, D-League players that, people will call them or whatever, just guys that aren't NBA players. I mean, obviously, Joel Embiid, they're waiting on him to come back from injury, and Nerlens Noel, Michael Carter-Williams, they've kind of been waiting on, to bring them back a little bit, dealing with some injuries of their own. But ironically enough, that the next night they almost bounced back to beat the Houston Rockets. I mean, they were up late in that game, I believe by 3 points, like in the final 40-some seconds. And I mean, the Houston Rockets, they're one of the premier teams so far in the league this year. And not reportedly, but actually, in the last minute of the game or whatever, there was a foul call, like a technical foul called against the 76ers, and there was you could see it if you're watching the game. Brett Brown was like standing near the ball or whatever, and he he didn't kick it hard like he was kicking an NFL field goal, but he kind of kicked the ball back towards the referee, as if to say BS on that call, that technical foul call there. And so obviously he kind of admitted he lost his composure and whatever. But I guess at least the Sixers almost beat a premier team here, and but yet they're still winless, and they're coming off a pretty big loss to the San Antonio Spurs. So the season, this taking this tanking to an all-time low here for the 76ers, it kind of just continues to roll on here. And like I mentioned earlier, with the Flyers, they, of course, they played Scott Hartnell last week in the Columbus Blue Jackets, and the Columbus Blue Jackets, who aren't a very good team really at all this year, and unfortunately they lose to them. The Flyers were looking pretty good up to that point. They were riding a 3-game win streak, and then they lost to the Blue Jackets after having almost a week off. And they come up flat against them, and then the next night they have to play the Montreal Canadiens, who are so far, they've been a very good team in recent memory, and obviously this year that's no different. So the Flyers lose 2 straight, this past weekend, and normally they play on a Tuesday night. They didn't last week because they had this long stretch of time off, but no, their next game isn't until tomorrow night. So once again, they have, in between games here, they have 4 days off essentially.
Gotta give you a few days to rest.
So yeah, they have another few days of rest here, and hopefully they won't come out flat again tomorrow night like they did against the Columbus Blue Jackets after having almost a week off. So that's that really right now as far as the other sports. Now I gotta get into I gotta bring something up here. Well, I'm sure I'm not bringing any news up to either of you guys. Obviously, last week there was that Kim Kardashian photo that leaked on that was leaking on the internet. I'm sure you guys know what I'm talking about. I think maybe, I don't know if it was last Tuesday night or Wednesday night. It was like mid last week, and suddenly I'm on my Facebook news feed or whatever, and then suddenly there's this Kim Kardashian picture, where of course they have the bottom part cut off where it's showing her butt, and it's so I'm wondering what's the deal with this, and there's a lot of talk been going around about this. Have you guys know what I'm talking about, right?
Yeah, well, I've seen it too.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, it supposedly, was supposed to break the internet.
I was like,
how can you break something that made you famous?
Yeah. Yeah, but anyhow, I don't know if you guys have seen what I'll talk about here in a moment, but actually ironically enough, a couple of years ago, there were rumors that Mark Sanchez was dating Kim Kardashian. I didn't even know this until I was looking around here, but I kind of saw something from a couple of years ago that there were rumors that they were dating, but Kim said she didn't even know who Sanchez really was, and kind of shot down those rumors. But now one of my friends showed me a picture, a Photoshop job last week of this Kim Kardashian picture, all shined up and with her big butt or whatever, and they photoshopped Mark Sanchez when he remember the butt fumble. They photoshopped Mark Sanchez, and really just supposedly running into Kim Kardashian's rear end. I don't know if you guys have seen that rendition of it yet, but I guess if you'd like, at your own discretion, if you're looking for a laugh, I guess check that. And people out there listening, in regards to the Philadelphia Eagles and this, this scenario, this quarterback scenario and everything. That's just. I don't blame the person for doing that. Obviously, it was a little creative right now with what's going, with this Kim Kardashian breaking the internet thing, and then of course Mark Sanchez, kind of like Mark Sanchez coming back as a starter again, and there's another Photoshop picture. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but obviously there's the references to Nick Foles, looking like Napoleon Dynamite and everything.
This guy is a special dude.
Just the way he looks and everything, and obviously that's not news, and then but somebody took a Photoshop picture of Napoleon Dynamite and Pedro from the movie Napoleon Dynamite, and they put Eagles, they put a Mark Sanchez jersey on Pedro, and they put a Nick Foles jersey obviously on Napoleon Dynamite, and to indicate, kind of like to poke fun at those two guys, the current quarterbacks of the Philadelphia Eagles, obviously minus Matt Barkley, of course, but as far as the first, obviously the guy, heading into the season, the starter Nick Foles, who we thought was going to be who was maybe going to play like a franchise quarterback, and unfortunately the first half of the season he hasn't looked like that, and then he goes down with a collarbone injury, possibly for the rest of the season, and now it's now the Eagles might be looking elsewhere in the future, really, for a quarterback, because they got Mark Sanchez, who I guess he can fill the shoes, like I've been saying, for Nick Foles, the way Nick Foles has been playing this season. Maybe Sanchez can, I guess, kind of get it done to an extent, but he's not the quarterback to lead this team to the Super Bowl or whatever. And I think that's the bottom line right now. And so yeah, that's that. I mean, look to the draft maybe to. That's their only bet right now. I mean, as far as perhaps finding a franchise quarterback, and I don't know. I mean, I wish them luck because they're going to have to develop a guy, really. But, they got to do what they got to do, I guess. Now, I mentioned also earlier, a little earlier in the show, about the running game and how New England Patriots, they bring out this guy, Jonas Gray, that nobody really knew who he was at this point, up until then. And, they kind of build the game plan around him. I mean, Tom Brady didn't even have to have a great game to beat this Indianapolis Colts team. And I mean, Gronkowski, he had that one really nice touchdown play. But I mean, other than that, Gronkowski wasn't a focal point here. So they bring this running back, and I'm watching this game. Of course, this was right after the Eagles game, and I'm watching this guy just. Nothing fancy about it. Just getting the ball and just powering it straight ahead. And, now whether the offensive line was creating good holes for him or whatever, I don't know. But he's just, obviously I don't advocate, on a weekly basis to use any running back for 38 carries, obviously. But certainly, if you're New England and you can kind of just bring out these new running backs out of nowhere, regardless of what kind of name value they have, I mean, I guess more power to you. And you want to run them down the opposing team's throats for 200 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, by all means, I mean, go right ahead. And I just look at, I know a lot of people aren't going to like this, and that they feel like the Eagles, like LaShawn McCoy is a should be an Eagle for the rest of his career or whatever. And I just, if he doesn't put up a big game against the Tennessee Titans, he must be like finished or just not what he was. I mean, I think that's the bottom line. I mean, he can't really do what he did last year, really. At least, I mean, I don't know if it's teams have really adjusted to him, but he just didn't look very fast, like he did maybe last year, against the Packers this past Sunday. He he's getting the ball, and obviously, he doesn't hit the hole like he should. And, this has been something that, Chip Kelly has kind of been critical of him all. He wishes he'd be more north-south. And, I agree. And I kind of just, I look at this game against the Packers where, again, it was another one of these games where, LaShawn McCoy was supposed to have a big game according to everybody. And, he never did. And it's kind of just much of the same thing. I mean, and then when they throw Darren, obviously, again, they can't run Darren Sproles very much. Obviously, you can't get the same amount of, you can't get those kind of carries that LaShawn McCoy does. I mean, Darren Sproles is a small guy, really, and he's good in the screen game, of course. They use him in that way, but he's not going to be the guy that, powers through everybody else. But when he does get carries, he's made some big plays. And not just in the passing game, but I mean, you look at like last week against the Carolina Panthers when they were in the red zone, and they did like that. They like pulled Riley Cooper over, and they did like this quick misdirection play for Darren Sproles. Like they faked it right, and then he just all of a sudden, boom, he goes up the left side, and there's nobody catching him at all. And it's, I look at plays like that, and you just don't see the same kind of acceleration with LaShawn McCoy to do. You just don't know what it is. It's like LaShawn McCoy gets the ball and he's ready to dance, or something in the backfield. I don't know. And then at least, you look at Jonas Gray. I mean, again, it's nothing fancy. Gets the ball and they, straightforward. That's the bottom line. And LaShawn McCoy, last year it was great. I mean, he made a lot of highlight reel plays last year with his quickness and his agility and his elusiveness. But this year, maybe, guys are coming in from the sides more and just shutting them down, and maybe he's just not as quick as he was last year. He had a big season last year, and he had a lot of action on the field last year. So I just don't know if he's the same guy anymore. And for this offense, I just don't know if Chip Kelly wants to keep him. If you're Chip Kelly, you got to be thinking, what if they got a running back like, another running back like Darren, who gets the kind of production that that Darren Sproles can get. They can actually use, 20 or more carries a game, because they can't, obviously they can't really do that with Darren Sproles. But what if they had a guy who was either going to power his way up, like Jonas Gray, for instance, or was just had very good acceleration and speed like Darren Sproles that they could use, to the same extent that they use LaShawn McCoy. Because, unfortunately, LaShawn McCoy's not cutting it, and he's the guy that gets pretty much 80% or more of the carries when you include Chris Polk and Darren Sproles in there. So that's kind of I think the bottom line where we go with this. And again, for this Eagles team, obviously, I mean, again, there's a ceiling on him right now. As far with Mark Sanchez as a quarterback, I mean, they don't have a franchise quarterback, so there's a bit of a ceiling on them right now for that. And because this defense, I mean, this secondary especially, I mean, they just obviously they're not going to cut it against Aaron Rodgers. And I mean, the defense this season, I mean, they haven't been, obviously in recent weeks up until that Green Bay game, they've been good, certainly. I mean, they've obviously they've given up their plays like in the Arizona game where, well, mostly the secondary again on that note, but I mean, the defense, they've been something that we've complained about all season long, really at all, for the most part. Maybe the early going in the season a little bit, but not in recent weeks. But again, I mean, the bottom line is they know what they need to do with the secondary in the offseason. They need to improve it because, I mean, you saw what happened in this game. You saw what happened in the Arizona game. I mean, I think for the most part, I mean, with the exception of some struggles in offense, a couple of big plays is what lost them the game in Arizona. And that was, again, that was very much on the secondary. And, them almost losing to the St. Louis Rams, game, a week where they went, they went to 4-1, but everybody was so critical of the team because the defense, I mean, between Nick Foles, fumbling the ball without even getting touched, and the defense just especially the secondary again blowing coverages, and again, I mean, it's little things like that are cost him at times. And I mean, I still think of that big Frank Gore play against the with the 49ers earlier in the season. That how could you leave a guy that wide open? And again, it's things like that. And I think hopefully they learn. And with whatever other games that they lose this season, which will probably again, it'll probably be games where the secondary gets exposed. I mean, if you're Chip Kelly and Billy Davis and whoever else that's making the personnel decisions, you have to know that that secondary is not cutting it, and that most of the time they're the reason that you're losing these games. That, well, I mean, the Arizona game that they could have won, and the 49ers game, even I mean, it wasn't the only reason, but it was definitely a big reason, and a reason why they look as bad as they did against the Green Bay Packers. That's I think that's the bottom line right now. Now, coming up on the other side for the last stretch here of the Tyler Werner Show today, we'll look at the playoff scenarios. Obviously, coming down the stretch here for the Philadelphia Eagles, the schedule and for them and the Dallas Cowboys, and how I think things, at least right now today, will shape up for the playoffs, specifically in the NFC, regarding the Eagles. We'll take a look at that on the other side. So without further ado, it's the Tyler Werner Show, and it's right here on Kutztown Radio.
I'm Steve Majiri, host of KU Live. Tune in every Tuesdays at 2 p.m. for all things Kutztown University. We will discuss everything ranging from school news, sports, and upcoming events, along with frequent appearances from student government to discuss new policies. We will also have members of ACE, the Association of Campus Events, to come in weekly to discuss what new activities are coming to the university. Tune in to 1670 AM or listen to us online at www.kutztown.edu/KUR or on your smartphone by downloading the TuneIn app. You can also listen to us via any phone by calling 610-465-7860. KUR, the radio voice of Kutztown University.
Newsbreak is a student-run news program produced right here at Kutztown University. It features stories that affect the Lehigh Valley, as well as Berks County weather and KU sports. You can watch on Service Electric Berks and on Kutztown University campus on Channel 24 and on Hometown Utilicom Channel 28. KU TV Newsbreak. What are you watching?
Who is this?
It is 7:45 right here on the Tyler Werner Show, right here on Kutztown Radio as we, we're coming off of obviously the huge loss to the Packers and everything, and, how maybe this Eagles team can rebound as we, come down the stretch here for the playoffs. Now, I wanted to get the schedule up for the Eagles, obviously. I mean, again, they should bounce back and beat this Tennessee Titans team pretty easily at home. That's the bottom line. If they don't, then obviously there'll be some outrageous conversation, I guess, on the Tyler Werner Show next week. But I don't see that happening. So the bottom line is they should beat Tennessee next week, and then obviously you have the big Dallas Cowboys game on Thanksgiving, which at Dallas, we'll allow for a loss to the Dallas Cowboys, and that'll leave them at 8-4 at that point. But there's no way I possibly see them losing 2 to this Dallas Cowboys team when in December, it'll probably be cold that night when the Cowboys have to travel to Philadelphia. And again, I mean, the Eagles at home, they've been pretty solid. I mean, they've been playing, obviously they haven't been beating these these premier teams. Obviously Green Bay, I mean, with Aaron Rodgers and everybody they have, I mean, they'll beat the Eagles at their home stadium, I would think. But I mean, the Cardinals, the 49ers, they had to play those teams on the road this season, and who knows? I mean, it seems like the tough games that they have that they lose, they're on the road, and so but as far as the Eagles at home goes, I mean, it'll be interesting to see how they play against these teams at home, the Seahawks and the Cowboys, and especially with the way the Cowboys, with their culture that hasn't changed really. I mean, under Jason Garrett and everything, how things pan out for them in December will be interesting to see. Because, again, I mean, they'll probably lose to the Eagles at home, I would think. And the week before that, they travel at Chicago, and Chicago's not very good, obviously. But then again, I mean, just knowing this Cowboys team, I mean, between either the Chicago Bears game or the Indianapolis Colts game, they're going to lose one of those. And I mean, it's bad enough that the Washington Redskins went in and beat the Cowboys with Colt McCoy under center for the record. It was ironic enough that hot streak that the Cowboys had going was ended by the Redskins down in Dallas. I mean, I don't expect them to lose to the Redskins twice in the same season, but it's one of those things that it could happen. And I mean, who knows? I mean, against the Giants, I mean, the Giants are pretty bad now too, and that downward spiral started with the Eagles beating them when everybody thought they might make a run this year. So, but since they've been bad, I mean, look, the Giants, ironically enough, they almost beat the San Francisco 49ers this past week. I mean, Eli Manning threw 5 interceptions, and somehow he was still in the game, ironically enough. God! I mean, 5 interceptions, and yet it was a close defensive battle, and they had a chance to win that game. That's that's hard to believe. But then again, it was another cross-country flight for the San Francisco 49ers, and they still managed to get it done. But again, I mean, you just with these division games, I mean, you can never count. You can't count them out, I guess, is what I'm saying. Even though they're not very good, I mean, as bad as the Redskins were, I mean, again, all of a sudden they upset the Dallas Cowboys at home after the Cowboys had won 6 straight or whatever it was. And then, of course, that led to a rather interesting YouTube video. I never even mentioned since then that I don't know who else out there has seen it, but I encourage you to check it out. Where coming down the stretch in that game in overtime, when the Cowboys lost, there was a very angry Cowboys fan. I mean, like something was really wrong with this guy, and he proceeded to slam his television set on the ground, and he was going around his apartment, and his friends or whatever was filming this going on, and he flips the table, the dinner table over. He takes an acoustic guitar and kind of just chucks it across the room. And I mean, if that's not, psycho enough, this guy towards the end of the video, he's like, he's saying like, "Where's the fish? I want to bite its head off." And, there's all kinds of other profanity in there. And just, it's one of the most embarrassing things I think you could ever see out there. But so that's another story in of itself. Cowboys fan destroys house after overtime loss to Redskins. An interesting video to check out on YouTube if anybody out there is looking for something to laugh at. But again, I mean, as far as the Eagles are concerned, I mean, they should beat Dallas once, and I think as long as they beat Dallas once, I think they're fine as far as winning the division. They have to. Well, they play Seattle at home, which again, I mean, Seattle, they're obviously they're banged up. They have some injuries, but they also have some it seems like they have some dissension in their locker room a little bit. I mean, Marshawn Lynch, who he had a pretty good game. He didn't want to go back to the locker room during halftime and everything, and I mean, I don't know. I mean, there's just some, again, and then a few weeks ago, people in the Seahawks locker room saying how Russell Wilson is not black enough or whatever, and just I don't know. There's clearly there's some dissension there, and the Seahawks are just not what they were last year. Obviously, they're far from the team that demolished the Green Bay Packers in Week 1 of the NFL season earlier this year, and they're banged up. And I think the Eagles at home should win that game, especially considering that the Seahawks are going to be sandwiched in between 2 games with the 49ers. Obviously a big rivalry game there, and I think the Eagles should win against the Seahawks. But even if they do lose to the Seahawks, I mean that still leaves them with only 2. Well, they lose to the Cowboys. If they would lose to the Seahawks, I mean that still leaves them with. They should still beat the Cowboys at home, and then they have the Redskins, who they should beat, and obviously, and that'll be the second last game of the season, and then the Giants last game of the season, who will, they'll be playing for nothing at that point, and they'll be looking towards what might be a very very interesting off season for them, with rumors of perhaps them thinking about life after Eli Manning, and I don't know, but I think the bottom line is if the Eagles beat the Cowboys once, which I think is very feasible, I think they'll be fine, because they'll fit, most likely, I mean, they can finish with the same record as the Cowboys, 11-5. But if they split, I mean, the Eagles have the advantage because the Cowboys already lost a division game to the Redskins. So, I think as long as that happens, I mean, I think the Eagles are fine then. And if they split with the Cowboys going forward here, I think that's really where we're at right now. But I mean, still, I mean, you never. I mean, it certainly wouldn't hurt for the Eagles to maybe deliver an upset for Thanksgiving. I don't know, but still, I mean, that's a tough spot, and I allow for them to lose on Thanksgiving against the Cowboys, but they must beat them once, and I think they will, definitely at home. So that's that. Before we wrap it up, we'll, of course, as we normally do, we'll finish with our on-air fantasy picks with Fleming and I. So let's see. We left off with my pick at wide receiver. So Fleming, you have the next pick for the fantasy football here.
All right, I'm going to start it off again with wide receiver T.Y. Hilton.
All right. Yeah, it's another. Yeah, you hinted at that earlier.
Yep.
It's a guy that I picked last week, and maybe those guys have big weeks this week and have touchdowns because they didn't the previous week. So now for me, for the wide receiver position, let's see. You had last week. You had Jordy Nelson, and I'm trying to think if I could go with one of those guys. And the way they're playing, I mean, I guess I'm going to go with Jordy Nelson. He's you can't really mess with him. So against the Vikings, I think Rodgers will continue to shine and maybe throw a touchdown or two to Jordy Nelson and amongst a lot of yards. So now I'll go with the next pick. I had Rob Gronkowski last week at tight end, who I guess I'll go that direction with next. And I mean, Gronkowski, I gotta think that the Saints, I mean, are at least at home against the Ravens here. This is a third straight home game. Ravens coming off a bye. I mean, it's a tough game to call, but I think Jimmy Graham is going to bounce back because he didn't have a good week last week, and I think he's going to be a key target here for Drew Brees. So I would expect that he has a bigger week than he did last week at the tight end position.
All right, so since you took the running back, the tight end that I had last week, I'm going to take the running back you had last week with Rob Gronkowski.
Yeah, I knew that's what you were going to say. But yeah, the tight end. Yeah, Gronkowski. Yeah, I mean, pretty much the another player that to some extent is up there in MVP conversation this year, but just kind of because it's tight end, I don't know if he would get the nod for that kind of honor there. So all right. So next, now it's I'm assuming you're going to take defense next.
Absolutely.
All right.
This one's kind of a draw for me. It's a toss up between San Francisco and Denver. I think I'm going to go with Denver.
All right. Yeah, sounds pretty good. Denver, and then for me, let me see who I can take this week for defense. I think I'll actually go with the defense you had last week. I'll go with the Bills defense hosting the Jets. They always seem to get some sacks and turn the ball over. So, as long as they do that, that should be pretty helpful for me. And, against this Jets team, obviously that's bound to happen. And now lastly, we got the kicker position. So let me see. Last week I had Steven Gostkowski. I think I'll go with a pretty familiar pick. Cody Parkey for the Eagles, considering that they should be able to move the ball against the Titans, but of course they have a reputation of red zone struggles, which means they bring out Cody Parkey and kick a field goal, and he's been a reliable kicker, obviously. So yeah, obviously it doesn't hurt to have him on the team. So your pick at kicker?
My pick for kicker is going to be Adam Vinatieri.
All right. Yeah, I saw him with a pretty nice what was it, like 50-yard kick against the Patriots this past week, and he still kicks those long field goals with plenty of room to spare, it seems, and plenty of leg, and still like right in the middle of the net when it goes through the uprights. So Vinatieri has been doing it for years, and he's still like one of the best kickers in the league. So with that in mind, that'll wrap it up for the Tyler Werner Show today. Thanks for tuning in as always, and of course, we thank our shadower today for his participation, and we give him a round of applause, and we'll see. Who knows? Maybe we'll have him back on the show. I don't know, but he'll be on other. I'm sure in the spring he'll be doing a show of his own right here on Kutztown Radio, and it's hard to believe, but the fall semester is over in just a couple of weeks. So, I mean, that's hard to believe. I mean, we just got a couple days of school next week, the rest of this week, and then one more full week, and then off for the winter. So, that'll be nice. That'll wrap it up today for the Tyler Werner Show. You can catch the podcast on Facebook.com/Tyler Werner Show. As always, when I get it up in the next day or so, and stay tuned for